And now, our feature presentation.
You are watching a master at work.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rafael Chacín, and welcome, because this is right now the first episode of the Combat Club with me, Rafael Chacín, and Zenith. So, what I'm going to tell you about it for the episode premiere, because we're going to talk about for the UFC, MMA, also a little bit of boxing, wrestling, all those things for the combat sports in one place, which is the Combat Club. And welcome to the first episode, because we're going to digest everything about for the MMA, UFC, a little bit of boxing, wrestling, so all kinds of things for the combat sports. And right now, here it is, the co-host of my partner, which is delightful, and of course, he got amazing things to talk about for the UFC, all kind of combat sports. So welcome, Zenith, and this is the first episode, the episode premiere of the Combat Club, because we're about to cook in something on the works. So right now, here I am. Here we are.
Absolutely fantastic intro to my co-host Rafael, and what's up to our chat. We got Robert in the house, we got Daniel in the house. Thank you guys so much for joining us this evening as we preview the UFC 298. And Rafael said it perfectly. We have a lot of great plans, a lot of great events, interviews, a lot of great things in the works behind the scenes for you guys. But coming with our first introduction, we do have a major UFC event this weekend in Anaheim, California at the Honda Center, which is UFC 298. So majority of this episode will be probably going over and previewing UFC 298, probably get into some rumors in the news and in the world of MMA, in the MMA space. And then in future episodes, when there is major, boxing, being that I'm an avid boxing fan, I know Rafael probably watches boxing a little bit more than me. What's up, Next Shift? Yep. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will get into like some major boxing news when that comes up. And then, it is WrestleMania season. So we got the Elimination Chamber coming up as well. So as that gets closer, we'll start mixing in the WWE. We are mostly going to be talking about MMA on this podcast. I don't want to steer anybody the wrong way, but we are avid wrestling fans. So we will dabble in the WWE from time to time when there is major topics. And then, of course, if there is a major super fight, or if there's a fight that we must talk about in the world of boxing, or let me stress, any major news in the world of boxing, we will cover it. And what's up, Alex? Big Blue in the Bronx. what's up for being here. Make sure you guys go check out all of these guys' channels. Amazing content. And if you guys are football fans, Big Blue in the Bronx just came back from the Senior Bowl. A lot of great clips on his Twitter and on his YouTube. So make sure you guys go check it out. But thank you guys for joining us on our adventure of our first ever episode. So go right ahead, Rafael. Take it over.
All right, so welcome everybody to the first episode. So we're gonna digest everything about for the MMA. So right now we're just talking about for the UFC 298, which is on Anaheim, California. Now,
Yes, let's pull this real fast, Rafael. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's pull up next shift's comment. Yes, we will cover PFL. We will cover one championship, but on major events, if there's major breaking news, I want to be clearly and transparent to you guys. We will mostly be covering the UFC, maybe a little bit of Bellator, but if there's major news in even wrestling world, in New Japan, in Ring of Honor, in AEW, we will be looking into that and diving into that. We're gonna strive off of you guys, and if you guys want us to look in discuss a certain topic, please let us know, and we'll look into it for future episodes. For when we do some planning for the next episode, we'll give you guys a bomb take on it. But go right ahead, Rafael. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, no, don't worry about that because this is this is like the episode premiere of this one. So let's check it out for the UFC 298 between Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. This one isn't the featherweight title bout. It is going to be on Anaheim, California. Now, a lot of people thought it was going to be like a epic battle, but I guarantee that it's going to be like a battle of all ages. Because in the one side, they have Ilia Topuria, which is a very striker grappler. He's very vulnerable to the left head kick as well, but Volk isn't going to be that guy to head kick in all his likelihood, considering he was like even shorter than Ilia. He's also vulnerable for the left head kick, but Volk's best path to victory is by utilizing his superior kicking game. I know he's been through a lot, but he's a former rugby player, but he has a little bit of a superior game. But Ilia Topuria has a bit of vulnerability to leg kicks during this boxing stance. Even Josh Emmett got a decent leg kicks on him. However, Ilia just better like pure boxing, in my opinion, so I can see like a pressure Volk the whole time while stepping in for the picking off leg kicks and preventing the kicks very effective. I mean, that could happen. It's like a 50-50. I will say like the Volk has the chance. Yep. But also I just rewatched the game between Volk versus Emmett, where Topuria was very solid and defensive. But before that, for Volk for the decision, but Emmett survived like 5 rounds of Molly, and that's what will be like the factor that could top in Ilia's favor. I mean, there's like a 50-50 chances win because he might not, but also it's like a 50-50 chances lose because he also might. But this is like the same reason, and there's a chance that never happens. But whatever it takes it about for the fight between Volkanovski, can he really buck train at the UFC 298? Because after he just lost against, also that in Saudi Arabia, which is totally very insane. But right now, the path of the victory of Alexander Volkanovski is really insane. So, how do you feel about for the Alexander Volkanovski, Ilia Topuria as the featherweight bout, and who's gonna be like a better striker, better grappling? So, let's suggest for the main event, Volkoria versus Alexander Volkanovski.
Absolutely. More than likely is going to digest this main event for you guys. Let's have you share the screen, and we can even look over this whole card. I know we have some other things, probably. I don't know if you had some other things planned as well, some other topics as well, but just looking at this whole card, Rafael said it perfectly. Starting out with the main event, man. This is the fight that everybody wants to show up for. This is the fight that everybody's going for. This is the fight that everybody wants to see, right? We got the great Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. Now, Ilia Topuria has been running his mouth lately in the news, talking like he's the champion. If you look at this guy's bio, his bios on Instagram is saying 15-1. This guy is really running his mouth, but deservedly so. There's one thing to be, extremely confident, and then borderline cocky. This guy is nearing that borderline cocky, but he is backing it up, and he is backing it up against doable competition. The reason why I like Tapology, guys, shout out to Tapology, they don't sponsor us, just giving them a free shout out, is they're showing the opponent's records when he fought them. You know, he's not fighting against scrubs. Yes, early on in his career, he did fight against up and comers. You know, we don't want to rush everybody too fast. But then when he finally got into the UFC, he's been holding his own against high level competition. As Rafael, my co-host, just mentioned, he held his own against Josh Emmett, and he did an arm triangle against Bryce Mitchell. And Bryce Mitchell is an up and coming contender. Now I know Bryce Mitchell just got knocked out against Emmett, but Emmett is a top 5 contender for a reason, guys. So that fight right here is super important for the fate of the featherweight division. If you look at the champion in Alex Volkanovski, he's coming off of a loss, moving up on short fight notice to the light heavyweight champion. Light heavyweight champion. Why am I keep on saying light heavyweight? To the
This is like the featherweight championship between
featherweight, lightweight to the lightweight champion. I don't know why I'm messing that up right now. Is in Islam. He was saying he was drinking. He was saying that he wasn't in camp, and I believe him. You know, when you go up there and you're not in camp and you're drinking every day and you're not healthy and your body's not in the best physical shape, you're not in fight shape, you're alone in fight camp, and you go in 11 days and go fight the champion Islam, and then you have to cut the weight, almost committing suicide in cutting the weight. You look at the guy in the weigh-ins, he looked mentally drained, physically drained. It looked like when TJ Dillashaw fought Henry Cejudo. That's how mentally drained he looked, and we all know how that one ended. They ended with Henry Cejudo knocking out TJ. So that being said, Alex did get knocked out against Islam, but this is him returning with a fight camp in his own division with something to prove. So yes, this is definitely going to be an exciting fight, and I am going to say this one is going to go down to the wire. Now, Ilya could clearly, he has striking, he clearly has wrestling, but we didn't see it against the top level competition. But what we did see him go against, he absolutely mauled. So when you go against someone, say like Emmett, that is one of the top level competitions, he did get past this challenge. But Alex Volkanovski is just another level above Emmett, and I truly believe that Alex Volkanovski will get it done. Next shift brought up a good point too. Elia Tabor has forced Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett, and not saying they're bad, but they're not your year of Max Holloway. Absolutely. That's another topic too. Breaking news, what happened last week is this guy is running his mouth saying he wouldn't give Yair another title shot. He wouldn't give Max Holloway another title shot. He wouldn't give Brian Ortega another title shot. Here's my question, Ilya. What happens when you lose this fight and Alex Volkanovski says no to you for another title shot? When you've proven yourself, I think Max Holloway wouldn't get this fight for the BMF title fight if he wasn't the number one contender in the featherweight and proves it against time after time after time. Yes, he can't get over Alex. He lost against him 3 times. But at the end of the day, you put him in the ring with anybody else, he beats. Unless his name is probably Destin Poirier as well. He has his number as well. But without taking too much time, I'm going to pass the hosting duties back over to Rafael, and we'll talk about these other fights a little bit later. I'll let him preview some of these as well. Go right ahead, Rafael.
All right, so let's take it over for another chance. And what you're talking about for Alexander Volkanovski, I mean, he has completely unaware sense of self-belief. I mean, he has a tall task at hand for him. Probably a victory will not only cement the Volkanovski legacy, but also he'd be like the first male at 35 to win a title fight, the belt of the welterweight in history. I mean, with a record of fighting, I mean, he firmly believes that he could challenge much higher divisions. He also had expectations, getting like an Islam Makhachev trilogy, and people would expect to the face to become the contenders and earn another shot, but it maybe does not leave fueled by ambition also to prove he has also lying a legacy defining after the 294. Also, there's Conor McGregor and Ben to Spain. Also, Tyson and McGregor frustrated for seize the opportunity. But I think this is gonna happen between the UFC 298. But I think the other reason that we just watch it because right now there's Ian Gary. Also, we just got Henry Cejudo. Now, Henry Cejudo, I mean, what can I say about this, folks? I mean, Henry Cejudo, he made like a great big transfer because absolutely madness. He just tried to call Aldo coming off 2 losses, coming off for a weight class with his title defense. I mean, between Henry Cejudo, I mean, that's absolutely madness. absolutely madness because Yang was all the time for the 6-fight winning streak, 9 including pre-UFC, and even fought Aldo for the interim belt 2 months left. But Cejudo wanted the easiest fight, but at the most clouds he could have retired. And I mean, there's no way had the contention for the greatest of all time to speak how much it is. I mean, it's been like the 4 years, but people still over it, and anything could happen at the history of the MMA. But and it was gonna win it regardless right now. But we kind of ended off with the sparring like who copies of the Dominic Cruz footwork. So it started with Cejudo kind of little things that are kicking the leg off. But then it started to put in the head down swinging like it was like weirdly enough. But Dominic Cruz had used the pay-per-view to complain and never missed a chance to have to come to define the legacy of 17 and 2. But also, I just thinking about the championship fights were more like a punishment before the stoppage. But I think it's going to be very premature after the goal and to see like anything could happen. But in this time against Murad Dishwali, I mean, that's going to happen like a 1,000 times. But it seems like it's a great combat athlete. But either it's not going to be like a crunch for everything. I mean, it's going to be like a huge add the books. I mean, it's going to tough having enough of it because he will look into striking it up because most opponents fear Murad's takedown and in freezing on the feet. But he had to be careful about the Henry Cejudo. But I don't think it'll continue on. But it might be the Nets knee, the slam betting on the play. But it was just like a few backs and in the same car. But keeping out in the middle for the attempts, for the head slams for the centers. But it's just like a very defensive at all. Very defensive.
Absolutely. Bomb points you made on that too. And let's touch on that fight for a little bit too. Henry Cejudo, yes, coming back, from that loss against the champion at the time in Sterling. You touched on him, that early stoppage against Dominic Cruz and obviously that knockout against TJ. TJ, honestly, in my mind, drugs or not, he wasn't on his best shape. He cut too much. He was mentally drained in that fight, and the same thing that we just got done talking about against Alex happened to TJ. Henry Cejudo, I think he retired too fast because I think honestly he was unproven. And yes, he may have gotten a lot of time off coaching and helping out these other great athletes and working with other up and comers to get them prepared for their fights and kind of put that coaching hat on. I really think he lost a lot of value time in the cage and a lot of time that he won't get back. I'm not saying he's going to regret it because he's already a world champion, an Olympic champion, and he really completed everything he set out his mind to compete outside of being a three division champion. But with his challenger is Moab. Like I think Moab is the second best bantamweight of this generation. If you think of it, first being Sean O'Malley because he is the champion, but I think Moab is on a 9-fight win streak for a reason, and this guy's stamina is next to none. This guy reminds me of Tony Ferguson in his prime with his stamina. This guy does not get tired and he's always ready to go in deep waters and take his opponents to deep waters and finish the fight when need be. Moab is an assassin and Henry is gonna deal with the assassin. I honestly think that Aljamain Sterling got all the glim and glamour, but Moab is the better fighter. I think if you put Moab versus Sterling, Moab beats Sterling. And they're not gonna fight because they're friends. And Henry lost to Sterling, and I think Moab smashes Henry. I don't think he goes out there and I said smashes. I don't think he goes out there and actually fully dominates, but he wins in situation he needs to win at. He beats him on the feet. He beats him on the ground. He beats him in the clinch. And I'm not taking nothing for granted. I know how elite Henry's wrestling is, but let's not count out how elite Moab's wrestling has been shown. And will it stack up for the wrestling against Henry Cejudo? And this is why this is such an important fight, because these guys are so even in so much areas. Like a lot of people will say, like, well, Rob will have the better stand-up, but a lot of people will say Henry will have the better stand-up. People will say Henry will have the better wrestling, and I think he probably does. But Rob has been tested against really good people. We'll see what happens in this one. Back over to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I just figured it out.
I honestly think, I'm sorry to interrupt, this should be the co-main event. I think as much as I respect Robert Whittaker and Pablo Costa, we'll get into that one in a minute. I honestly think this Henry Cejudo and Moab should be the co-main event, because I'm not saying that UFC doesn't know what they're doing, because they know what they're doing. But I would say that Marab, like, start marketing this guy like a story, because this guy is a story, and this guy is deservingly so of that co-main event spot. Go right ahead.
Yeah, then speaking of the bout for Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa, I mean, there's so much higher on that tape
It's facts next.
because
The insurance.
he's gonna finally have to go for it, because he was supposed to face to Razor back in April 2021. But Costa withdrew to ill illness, and years later, they just announced that the middleweights will face at the UFC 284. As it turned out, Costa was in contact with the contract enough not to sign to fight Will Baker, but he has a linked new deal with the UFC, putting pay to paper for the former UFC. I mean, there's no real height to go to pulling off of the games and whatnot, but it was very responsible to he pulls out and insane. But I think that he has to go for it, because there's too much I had to go for a stake. I mean, he goes it on it. He goes it on it, because I know he had a lot of chance to go for that against Whittaker. I mean, if they wanted to see it, well, they got to worry, because nobody thought it's going to happen like a shot. I mean, everything could have happened in this one. I thought it could have been like a master class, but he has the chance to pull it. But I don't think that Costa is going to show up, because he just pulled up for 5 fights since 2021. It's not like an indicator at the end, but I don't know what it is. He only fought 3 times since 2020. I mean, Rick Ross making way definitely play a factor in this fight if he doesn't show up, because they tried to book so many fights so many times. It's just like it almost had Khabib versus Tony. I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, if Costa's going to win, they're going to be blasting enough of his male, the underdog, but it's going to be like at a puncher's chance. But in that picture, it's going to happen because he was like an injured, but he had to have felt it a belt for the bet already, but it's going to happen to go for it. I mean, if they're going to win this, because what it take doesn't have to anything out of the top of the division, and Costa is very interesting, because if he loses, pretty much down to the top of the division. And if it could win, even the Oscar is smart, but who knows it's going to be like in a no way out. Who knows it's going to win it, because I think with Taker, isn't not knocking out Costa, he's not going to get much success on the ground, because this is like at a 50-50 against with anything if you ask. Because with a Taker, either circus and around Costa to decision, picking on par for the Costa's knock on him. People forget how hard Costa he is, because he just fought 3 most Iron Chins in the UFC back to back. Then fought Luke Henrod in the 7-8, which is he can knock out everybody else. He can grab anybody else, but I think he's going to have an opportunity if he does have to get a shot.
Well said. Well said. I think Pablo Costa is on the right path for success here, but I still have one question, and this is the burning question in my mind. I'm not worried about his striking. I think you covered that. I am worried about his wrestling and his takedown defense. When Robert Whittaker just came off of a tough fight against the champion, wasn't the champion at the time, but Duplessis. And with Robert Whittaker, he got dropped bad in that one. He got knocked in that one. And I do believe that Robert Whittaker is still one of the better middleweights of our generation. It's just you don't wanna test Pablo like that. I think Pablo's the better stand-up striker. I know that sounds crazy because Whittaker does have hands. I think the road to success with Whittaker is utilizing that ground game against Pablo. Make him tired, utilize that takedowns, and make him fight off of his back. If Whittaker can dominate him on the ground, which I think Whittaker is aiming to take this fight, I think Whittaker wins this fight. But if Whittaker wants to stand up and strike with Pablo Costa, I think Whittaker's chin is a bit aged, and I think Pablo Costa can put Whittaker away. And I know that sounds crazy, but Whittaker he's a veteran. He's been fighting for so long. Pablo's been veteran too, but he had a lot of injuries. He took some time off. But if you really watched Whittaker, his chin it's not filling him just yet. But the road to success in this fight is get the fight to the ground and beat Pablo on the ground. Like Whittaker may have the better striking and may feel like he does and may want to test that, but don't test that because Pablo is gonna catch you because he did lose against the champ Izzy at the time, and then he lost against Melvin, I believe. But that loss against Melvin, Melvin, I believe, took him down. If I'm correct, took him down in that fight and made him fought a full MMA fight. And that's what you have to do. Now I know Casca's brother is his coach. He's been teaching him throughout his career. BJJ. I know he has wrestling. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I honestly think that Robert Whittaker needs to utilize a full MMA to win this fight. One thing before we touch on this Ian fight, I want to touch on this guy coming up. We all know who Van Bird is. If you guys don't, he's the one who got demolished against Bo Nickel. He's not the guy I wanted to touch on, but I want to point his name out because he did save Bo Nickel's fight that last time out, and he took the fight straight off the couch at 7-0 on a 2-day notice, something ridiculous to fight Bo Nickel. Now, Bo Nickel obviously is a future champion in this sport, and he deservedly so won the fight. But Vanderbilt is appearing for his true training camp, a full training camp. I would say his for real debut in the UFC. So shout out to Val Vanderbilt. That's going to be a good fight. But I want to touch on Danny real fast. Like, I know Danny's a new up and comer. Nobody really knows his name, but I think a lot of people will know his name real soon rather than later. Okay, this guy is technically on a knockout tear. Don't mind this loss. That's not in a MMA. That's in the BJJ and with Tapology. They put all the combat sports that these guys enter in. But if you look at his MMA career, I know these against guys that really don't have established names themselves. So we don't really count that. We don't really count, we can't count Raheem Forrest because Raheem Forrest is a legit contender and is not a legit contender. I wouldn't say that. I'll go as far as say that. But Raheem Forrest was a good contender for him at the time. And Raheem Forrest could one day appear in the UFC. We just never know. All right. But what this guy does to his opponents is some guy that I'm going to tell you is my guy to just keep an eye on, okay? This is the combat clubs. This is Zion Zenith guy to just keep an eye on. I remember seeing him on week 8 of the Contender Series, and absolutely, his nickname is Left Hand to God, absolutely murked. When I mean murked Forrest, okay? Not only that, but he's murked everybody that they put in front of him in the minor leagues. So if you're not a UFC fan, but you're still watching us, respect to you. Consider this guy stepping up from maybe an NXT and coming to the big time to the WWE SmackDown. You know what I'm saying? And UFC. And he's about to make his UFC debut against Josh Quinlan. And don't sleep on this guy as well, because this guy was a champion in another organization, up and coming leagues as well. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well your UFC debut, and that's what makes this fight even more important because this guy literally came up the same thing, right? All these up and comers, they come up fighting nobodies or people just trying to make the name for themselves as well, and they get on a nice winning streak, right? And then they finally get stopped. Because they meet their match. They meet the level that they're at, and eventually they train and they get better and they practice like every other hobby in life or any other career path, and you get better and you improve, and then you get to highlight the main events if you're good enough, right? But for now, he's coming off of a debut that he lost, the UFC debut that he lost, and now he's fighting against Danny Berlo that's undefeated. This is a lovely prelim to watch, guys. And if I had to put money on it, I'll take Danny Berlo by knockout. So keep an eye on that, guy. Keep an eye on that, guys. So that being said, back over to you, Rafael. I'll let you select another fight that we can talk about.
Yeah. Also, there's another fight coming out, which is Geoff Neal versus Ian Machado Gary. Now, Ian's undefeated, so it's gonna be like the first loss with ultimately knockout for a bag, because there will not be like a longer asking, can anyone beat that guy? Because after the last couple months of being clowned, if Ian gets a night performance or a knockout victory, we will go back to focusing on this fighting instead of his personal life. But if he loses, it's better like it's getting Photoshop, but I don't think it's gonna happen like this one. But I think of Ian Gary, it's gonna be like a more talented strikers. I mean, they had to set aside because he's one of the most talented strikers. I mean, immediately following him on the ground and light on top of him, I mean, he always had the feeling about that fight because I was very convinced it's gonna be like a walk in the park because Neil can crack.
Oh yeah.
Also, Ian doesn't have exactly the defensive progressive at the side. You had to control the distance well. The if always had the stance for a lost Neil to get on the side, you could drop it. But I know he's often the potential stars on big cars before they earn the spot, but sometimes it's got to work it out. But maybe it's gonna be like a sleeper, but who knows? It's gonna be like at the very end because this fight is gonna be like a totally sweeper. But I mean, they're just like talented. He's gonna be like Tama, whatever he's gonna enter after gonna throw, but also he's gonna be like a second round stoppage. So the state about it, Jeff needed some A-light talent because he had a rough fight against Shabbat. But people don't understand how much of Gary is he can fight like a motherfucker. He also wasn't way the fastest improved fighters whatever to see because every fight he gets better, he has a better performance. Also, he got out with the song. He ever acknowledged the mistake that he made the past fight, but it seems like in the new of it, the fight what he did, but he's gonna like clean it off at Neil more than likely because I'd see like a second knockout, a second round knockout. So it's gonna be like a very difficult, but I would love to see Ian Gary gets like a very knockout of the second round.
Well said, well said. And I honestly think this is the UFC feeding golf to Ian. Now, Ian, if you're gonna win this fight, you need to take this guy serious, okay? The reason why I pointed out Mahal is Mahal been absolutely on a tear, guys. And Ian, not Ian, sorry. Neil was the last person to beat Mahal, and then look at that streak. We talk about that another day because this guy certainly deserves a title shot. But we know you got Shemaya in that division, and that's another story for another day. But that being said, do not take this guy lightly. This guy is a veteran for a reason. Golf Neil has been there, fought the best of the best for a very long time. Don't let this 15-5 record fool you. If I was to tell you Iceman's record, you know, if true MMA fans don't know, you guys would be like, what? Wow, but he one of the goats and he one of the pioneers will be like, yeah, but you know, in the olden days, man, this guy fought everybody. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at veterans and you look at the record, you'd be like, man, it doesn't really look that good. But at the end of the day, they fought the who's who their whole career, right? Some of them being most of their career. If I look at Golf Neal's, I guarantee you most of his career will be in the UFC. Look at that. You know what I'm saying? Early on in legacy, and then boom. From 7-2 forward, straight killers. All right, but Ian, I think he's taking this fight serious, and I think that's exactly what he needs to do is take golf serious. Because if he doesn't, he's gonna lose this fight. It's pronounced Jeff Neal. Golf Neal, Jeff Neal. Yeah, I feel you. But he needs to take Neal. He needs to take Neal serious, and I think he does. He is. He does a trip of a shot on embedded of him training with going to Oliveira's gym to train with him. And I just think he is embracing this MMA journey, should I say? I don't know. We have other fighters like maybe Sean Strickland and they don't like the guy, but at the end of the day, that's their problem between Ian and Sean. For me, I'm a fan of Ian. I think he's a great fighter. I think he has a long way to go and a lot to improve on. But for being 13-0, he's shown that he is and could be the cream of the crop one day, the top of the top. If he continues going and showing out like he has been done, he has a lot of great up-and-coming main events in the welterweight division. And that being said, he needs to get past this test with Jeff Neal, Golf Neal. He needs to get past this test against him. And if he does, then it's on to better things. And I say early stoppage, get him out of the way early. I would say middle of round 2, maybe not too early because Neal is a veteran. But Gary needs to go in here and he needs to prove a point. He can't go in there and sloppy take this decision. That's not me disrespecting Neal. I'm just saying I consider Gary to be that good to be able to go in there and just take Neal out. He just came off of a tough fight against Shakawat. Shakawat got him in round 3 really, 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 really late. I say early round 2, if anything. Over to you, Rafael.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, these one are the fights that we're looking at the UFC 298 and Anaheim,
Mhm.
California. So that would be said like the main event is gonna be like extraordinary because they had Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria, Red Whittaker versus Paulo Costa, Geoff Neal versus Ian Machado Gary. Also, they got Meritashvili versus Henry Cejudo. I mean, these are the amazing fights that we guarantee that no one's gonna disappoint for everything but for the UFC 298 on Anaheim, California. And I guarantee because right now they're gonna do like a celebrate for everything the reason because we just need to get a focus about for this one. So I mean it's gonna be like a great opportunity to see like how much they're going to see those fights right here, but also they just see like a lot of takes had to go with. I mean, this gonna happen like it's gonna be like a really excited for the all of these fans right here. So that being said, because right now we're just talking about for over like 36 minutes for the preview for UFC 298. So right now, let's just want to move on from the next topic for all these mission martial arts. So right now, I
I
know the
love it. And real
UFC.
fast, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but real fast, yeah, you're absolutely dead on that. We should move on. But before we move on, I want you to keep an eye on two other people, guys. Mackenzie Dern, we wasn't really going to go in food topic of these guys, but next chef said it perfectly. Mackenzie Dern, absolutely a stud coming up in the women's strawweight division. Keep an eye on her going against a tough fight with Amanda, but I got Mackenzie in this one. And keep an eye on Romanov. He is 4-2 in the UFC. Came into the UFC, another champion in another division. Lost his early two fights and then absolutely went on a tear. Okay, this guy is on a 4-fight win streak against pretty decent competition. Okay, look at this punches, head kick, liver punch. Okay, this guy is absolutely streaking right now. So keep eye on this fight as well. I can see Roman getting another stoppage here as well. And that being said, that'll probably end our wrap up for UFC 298. Back over to you, Rafael. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, don't worry about that because right now for the next topic we're talking about because right now the UFC 300 is around the corner at Las Vegas, but there's like the best options to be like the main event of the UFC 300. I know it's gonna be set on April 13th in Las Vegas, less than 2 months, but
The
still like at
greater
a gaping
podcast in the
hole.
building.
Yeah, there's still like at a gaping hole to the lineup, but because really at the alignment card is maybe one of the biggest in the promotion history, but it's like gonna be a little surprising in the eyes of some fans, but it's gonna be like very disappointed. So there's like a few options that I got to name on it. And salute to the Dark Raider podcast, also Raider Attorneys in the building. Salute to the chat right here. So this is like the episode premiere of the Combat Club. Also, we just get up for the 5 possibilities to make it assured for the main event of the UFC 300, which is in Las Vegas. First, they got a two planning between Leon Edwards versus Kazma Chibre. I know their welterweight champion Leon Edwards is one of the few title holders on the roster who seem like free and clear to the UFC 300. So far, the promotion has declined to book him the card, but at this point, he's surely aware the bout offer. He has very interesting options to their opponents. But Kazma Chibe, he's undefeated. He has one of the biggest stars at either middleweight or middleweight. Also, being booked for the fight Edwards, also not to avail. But he's like a history for the two of them. Also, the another one, which is very interesting, Alice Pereira versus Israel Ascendaya. Now, Alice Pereira is another like a current champ who's be like available to slide into the main event. The big question: if the Brazilian light heavyweight is called about, who will fight? There's like an options in the division, including Jamal Hill and long contender Mohamed Garber. But if the UFC really wants something with luster, they should book Pereira against the chief rival of the combat sports career, Israel Ascendaya. They have met 4 times across kickboxing MMA, and Pereira won for his first 3 encounters. 2 of them were knockout, but they separated like a dramatic knockout loss in the second and the most recently fight. Also, there another one is going to be Leon Edwards versus Mila Muhammad. I know Kisman Chisman is the option for Leon Edwards. The division top contender, the man who should be like getting like the crack of the title is streaking Mila Muhammad. I know Muhammad is from Chicago. He's unbeaten for the last 10 fights. A streak includes over a high level of position against Wonderboy Thompson, Vicente Luque, Sean Brady, and Gilbert Guns. I'm going to say that it seems like if they're going to need it because he's long stand to expect the fight at 300. Well, Muhammad, who's like Chima, is in no objection to training through Ramadan. Also, the another one, Dracus Duplessis versus Israel Sendaya. Also, a middleweight title between reigning champion Dracus Duplessis and former champion Israel Sendaya is one of the easiest ones, the bustiest that could be put it together to now. I mean, Duplessis has been more talking about having to won the belt against Sean Strickland last month, and despite losing the title to Strickland for 2023, he remains like one of the biggest stars in the division, but not just now, but ever. It probably just look at the logger for the UFC 300 main event, but money talks. It also well to the promotion investment, but only about the criticism with if the UFC can cobble it together for a solo main event. Also, the another one, which is like a possible fight for the main event of UFC 300, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. If the UFC wants to be special, if the promotion really wants to card this bigger, it had to be Conor McGregor on the bill. Despite not finding successful 2021 loss to Dustin Poirier, and now once he beat up the Ghost of Gods, Donald Cerrone in 2020, he remains the biggest star in the MMA and surefire the way to push a pay-per-view past the 1 million mark. I mean, Chandler, the former Bellator lightweight champ, he always been a fan favorite. He always linked in a fight for McGregor, his pair staff as a coach for last season of the Ultimate Fighter. He has some, it seems that had scaled the UFC for booking McGregor for the card, whatever. That's the question is simply like the brass will know to keep it on another card later. It's unclear, but the promotion wants to establish an event against the Irishman with a blank check. That will probably go for it. I mean, and now for the question about it. So, who do you think is going to be, who should be the main event of UFC 300 for you in Las Vegas, Nevada? The main event of UFC 300.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you don't mind sharing my screen as well, because this is such a big,
All right.
this is such a big event, and we are going to preview it on a later date, guys. But Dana White, and this is the question, right? This is the burning question that everybody has been asking themselves when all of these fights was getting announced. And as you guys can see, from premier fight, from top to bottom, is just absolutely premier after premier after premier fight, right? And the question was, well, who's gonna be the main event? Rafael named all the rumors. He just covered it, gave you 5 rumors, and those was the 5 top rumors. Dana White came out and he said it's gonna blow everybody's mind. So then it got me thinking, it got everybody thinking. We have all these fights, and then you think back and you think, oh, Dana White appeared on the Fusen podcast the other day, and he said he's been trying to figure this out. It's been crazy. It's been a whirlwind over the past 2 weeks. He said there's 2 more fights to announce, and it could mix this whole card up. So what this just got me thinking, okay, if there's 2 fights to announce and it could mix this whole card up, what does that mean? I think it's 2 big fights. I think the fight that he was trying to get was your John Jones versus your Stipe, but John Jones came out and he can't fight until April, so that's off the books. Then I believe he was trying to do something real big on the side with Conor McGregor, but he didn't know if Conor McGregor was gonna be able to make it. When I mean real big, I'm talking about a Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3. I think Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3 would be a perfect fight for UFC 300. I know he has that fight with Michael Chandler, but when you think of UFC 300, nothing against Michael Chandler, I think that's a huge fight, but I think Conor versus Nate 3 is much more bigger, being that Nate was a veteran from the UFC since a long time and they have history with each other. But then I believe that's probably off the books as well, but we'll see. Then when you think about what he said on Fusen, he said it can mix up the whole card. What that tells me that some of these fights, what was on the main card, will now get pushed back because he might come with a bang. And now he might, have a main event for the prelim and a main event for the main event, or he might push some of these big main events down to prelims and then just have a fire 5-stacked main event. When I'm thinking of fights he could announce, I think you named a couple. I think Edwards was kind of like their third choice. I think they didn't want to go with Edwards. I think the reason why they're probably going to have to go with Edwards is because I don't think Izzy's ready to fight as well. I think Izzy turned down the Duplessis fight. They might give Izzy a bag, and then Izzy's probably gonna accept it. But I honestly think he's turning it down because when Izzy said he's gonna take time away from the game, it wasn't him like just because Sean has the title, and that's because no, he really needed time. When GSP, he didn't care who had the title when he took time away. No, he took time off. He came back 3 years, won the middleweight championship against Michael Bisping, and retired as one of the GOATs next to John Jones and Khabib. GSP deserves to be in that sentence. That's what he did, okay? So when you talk about Izzy taking time away from the game, does he come back immediately and he immediately fight Duplessis? We will see on that one. So it comes down to Edwards. I think that was the last choice, and I think that's the choice that I have to go with. And I think they try to offer the fight to Bahal because they wanted Chimaev, but Chimaev is coming out in media being really suspicious. So I don't know if he signed an NDA or I don't know if Chimaev knows something, but I think it's going to be Edwards for sure versus someone. And the reason why I said Edwards as the third choice or the last choice is nothing, no disrespect against Edwards, but Edwards is the younger champion out of all of them. And honestly, we all know that John Jones and Izzy and McGregor is a bigger draw than Edwards. So Edwards actually being the fourth choice in this. So I honestly think it is going to be Edwards versus someone. But if for some reason I think why they're holding out is they're holding on McGregor or they're holding on someone bigger than Edwards, because if they do that, then they can announce maybe if they do this, they can announce Conor and Michael Chandler for the main event, and then they do Edwards and Bahal Muhammad, because I think the UFC right now thinks that Chimaev and Edwards is the bigger main event, and I don't know why they don't respect Mahal, but they don't. They don't respect Muhammad for some reason, so I don't think they're holding back because they don't want to announce Edwards versus Muhammad as the main event because they do not think that's worthy of a big main event at UFC 300. Call me crazy. I think it is. I think that's the way that the UFC is thinking, and that's why we're waiting for so long. They have so much fights that they're trying to put together, and the rumors about if you guys had listened to any rumors about other UFC stories coming back or anything like that, as far as Anderson Silva, Brock Lesnar, or GSP, or Khabib, I wouldn't look anything on that. I don't think it's going to be any of those fighters. I think the person we do have is on roster. If he's not on roster, the only person that would come back for this fight, I believe, is Nate Diaz. Nick Diaz, I'm sorry. Nate Diaz, yeah. And we'll see, though. We'll see. Good question, Rafael. But as you see, this is a fire cord, UFC 300. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but shout out Kyla for coming over from the PFL, finally making her UFC debut against Holly Holm. Well, we have a lot of time to talk about this card, but back over to you, Rafael.
Yeah, because right now it seems like because right now we're just gonna have to focus on about for UFC 298 and of course for the main event. I mean,
299 is coming up. A lot of things we're gonna talk about too. Yeah,
so
it's only the first episode, guys. We have so much stuff. We're not gonna fit it all here in an hour and a half time. There's so much to talk about, so little time. But stay tuned weekly, and you guys will get the news. Right back to you, Rafael.
Yeah, because I know this is gonna be like a longer because right now it's gonna be between 60 minutes or maybe longer, but I think we're gonna be able to adjust it a little bit more because I know you brought for the team for the UFC 300, but actually they're gonna do it because that would be interesting because they just spend millions for marketing during the Super Bowl. I mean, they don't even like the epic trailers for big fights they did for Conor Ronda for the Madison Square Garden. But they definitely had the big fight to announce it if it was true, because I'm thinking if they're gonna bring it for the against for anything, the one side to go is to scrap it. I mean, I had to go with. I mean, remember when it goes for the UFC 100 between John Fish versus Pablo Thiago, and then the UFC 200 main event, Tate versus Nunes. It was the same for the weekend event. I mean, they're gonna happen because it really gotta keep it like in the mystery till event and to just walking around through the fog into the cage. I mean. It's gonna be like the details because it's gonna be like very interesting. But we might get it finally to main event for today, but it will take it like a very surprise. But also there's another fight who can really shock it at all, which is Stipe Miocic versus Tom Aspinall. I mean, who could have taken another fight if it will be a shocker, but it's not going to be a problem. It's the A quotation. I mean, if they're going to be a shock because I know Dana White is a promoter. Expect to say this main event is going to blow your mind, but it sounds like an announcer we did see like in the disputations, but it's going to be like a new weight divisions, retired fighter coming back. It's going to be like a thousands of the surprises because originally, if it turns out because of Liam versus Baylor, because they couldn't find anything better. After all this delay, that would be shocked at anybody would believe. But anything, it will be shock to us because it means when after the main event, we could be keeping like at a very few like at a dime. I mean, everything could expect it at the main event of UFC 300 because they're gonna celebrate to throwing off at the house for the 300 events and to make it for the first because the first one it was in 1993, and people they not forget about it. The UFC, which is the first event, which is they got a lot of talent and a lot of good things. But I think the UFC 300 is gonna be like up to the level, but it's still like in a mystery to going out for the main event of UFC 300, but. Yeah, let's check it out for like this one. So I know it's gonna be like it because there is so much to digest to the UFC, but I think we had so much of a little bit of the time for this because right now there's just like a program for 1 hour because it's gonna be like a very interesting because it's gonna be like the first episode of the Combat Club. So it's gonna be like a stay tuned about for anything could happen like this one. So
yeah, you brought up a good point. Not to interrupt you, but you brought up a good point with Tom Aspinall. But then when you think of Tom Aspinall, I don't think of Stipe. I think of Jamal Hill, the rightful owner of the heavyweight championship, right outside of John. Before you got even like that light heavyweight, you get the point. But that being said, you gotta think of his name as well. You know what I'm saying? So there's so much options. You hit it on the nail. There's so much time, so much things to get to. And there's so much fights, man. So much fights. This is gonna be great. Back over to you.
yeah, exactly. And of course, I know there's gonna be like a really event, but also there's some rubber fights had to go to watch it because everyone expect it to be like very big. But I know that the fans want to see like over there because I know there's a lot of very interesting fights that are going over there. I mean, look what it take it for like a lot of surprise to go for the see is gonna be over like an announcement. But let's just have it like the post-fight press, and I mean that could happen because right now the main event is gonna be announced at the post-fight press by Dana White at the UFC 298. So let's kind of checking them out for the post-fight, and who knows gonna be like the main event. It should be in like the post-fight with presenters wearing like it's gonna be on the women, but it's gonna be like the best for somebody. It's no big deal because as it all over red because it gotta like at a very it's like they're gonna be like a surprise for the big end, but obviously it doesn't have anything in mind. But also it's just gonna be like it's gonna be like a real tricky, but sometimes the fans are gonna take it. But it's all about for the fans who want to expect it the best and everything. But I don't see like a very leaking about it, but I think it should be like a very interesting to see who's gonna be like at a shocker event. I mean, who's gonna be like the takeover for the main event of UFC 300. I know there's still like no main event announcers. You had to wait until Saturday, which is the post-fight event. I mean, that could happen because there are so many fighters who can probably get like one shot, one opportunity at the UFC 300 because it's gonna be an announcement. So there's like a few people to just like move in on for the actual main event. So there's not gonna be like a rush announcement. I mean, there's something like in the social media that say when they're gonna announce the main event of UFC 300, there's like a misreception because there's some like coming to the social media scale like, oh, I really like it. Oh, this is gonna be like repulsive. But at some point, at the comments of the social media, this like it's gonna be interesting, but I didn't like it. But it's the reaction of the fans who need to see so much bigger, so much bolder, and of course, it's gonna be like a huge impact. I know the UFC has been for a long time since 30 years in the band, and since then had the great marketing of the social media. Also, they can promote for everything. I mean, the impact of the marketing and the social media is very huge. They had a usual a contract for the ESPN Plus to see all the pay-per-views, and they're still going on it. I mean, there's gonna be like in the mainstream sports, but anything could happen at the UFC 300. Anything could happen at the main event. So I don't mind how to go for it, but we want to be like expect the unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. Facts on that. And expect the unexpected. It's going to be a fire event, and we have so much fire events coming up. You know, we got UFC 298, we got UFC 299, but not only that, we got a lot of fight nights in between. So just stay tuned to this podcast, guys. We're going to be covering it all. I know there's a bunch of things going on in the world of WWE as well, with that whole press conference at WrestleMania weekend, with the whole The Rock and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that too, probably on a future episode, get into the WWE world for a bit. And then, of course, when there's major events in boxing as well, we're going to touch on it as well. But right now, since there is the bigger fights of the year, when it comes down to UFC, we're going to be touching on that going into the summertime with July, with the annual UFC fight event expo that they do, fight week that they do in Vegas. We'll be touching that. Anything combat sports, anything UFC, MMA, and other organizations. If it is interesting, we will touch on that. If there is any major topic, stay tuned. We'll probably touch on that as the show goes forward. We'll be, developing and getting better. For our first episode, we're just kind of winging it, nailing it, going by air, see what comes, see what sticks. You know what I'm saying, and trying to build the chemistry with each other, and obviously with you guys as well. And we appreciate you guys watching and supporting. But back over to you, Rafael. So much great things to talk about in the world of combat sports.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we just talking about for the UFC 298. And of course, who's going to be the main event for the UFC 300? I mean, there's like a different stuff that we're talking about it, but right now we're just taking it off for like a 1 hour, because right now it's almost 10 p.m. Eastern time, because right now I had to go to make some dinner. Also, I had to take care of my little brother. But it's been like an amazing episode, the premiere episode of the Combat Club, because not only we just covered it out with the UFC, the mixed martial arts, but also with the boxing, wrestling, like WWE, AEW, with my co-host Zenith. So it's gonna be, stay tuned for more details, because this is just the starting of something new. So get ready, folks, because this show is gonna make it like anything can happen. And before the event of UFC 298, oh boy, this is gonna be like a really interesting. So shout out to those persons who came out to the chat. Shout out to Robert Pena, No Mets, No Nets. Also the Raider Podcast was good. Also Next Shit, Big Blue and the Bronze. Also Johnny Shepard. Thank you very much to hanging out with us. And it's been like a great premiere episode of the Combat Club with Zenith and El Capitán Rafucho. So it's gonna be like a really excited episode. So stay tuned for more to the Combat Club with more action, more fights to the UFC, and of course, kaboom, more knockouts to the arm, to the face. So have a great night, folks, and remember, just get ready to the fight right now, because we're all like Jean-Claude Van Damme in Blood Sports.
Remember I love it. I love it. Okay.
All right. So
see, honestly, too, anything combat related. So, we have Roadhouse coming out soon. Might talk about combat films. Who knows? Get into some martial arts. It's combat. We're touching it. Funny combat videos. It's gonna be a fun time here at the Combat Club. We're taking it all serious. On a serious note, we're gonna have fun. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Let's get it.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, it's been like an amazing premiere episode of the Combat Club with Rafael Chacín as known as Capitán Rafucho, and my co-host, Zenith. I will see you there next time at the next episode, at the next corner at the Combat Club. Let's get it.